He always looked at me like that. Part 1. My best friend spent months complaining about his biggest rival. Little did he know, every argument only made him fall deeper in love. I was the only one who saw the truth. I need to tell you about the two most insufferable men I have ever met in my 20 years of living. Because one of them is my best friend. And the other one is apparently the love of his life, he just doesn't know it yet. And I, Zara Osei, am the only person on this entire campus who can see it. Which is both a gift and a personal curse I did not sign up for, did not ask for, and cannot seem to put down. I have tried. Multiple times. I have tried minding my business. I am not built for it. This is not my fault. Let me start from the beginning, because that's where all of the important disasters live. Levi Williams has been my best friend since our first week of freshman year, when we ended up sitting next to each other during orientation and both pretended to take notes while actually doing nothing. We bonded over that. Over the specific art of looking busy while doing absolutely nothing. We were the only two people in a room of 300 who had not written a single word. We made eye contact over our empty notebooks. We have been inseparable since. He is, objectively, one of the best people I know. He is also one of the most difficult. He's brilliant, the kind of brilliant that makes professors pause mid-sentence and rethink their slides. Not in a showy way. In the way where you're halfway through saying something and you can tell he's already seen where it goes, and the slight furrow between his brows isn't boredom, it's him 3 steps ahead, figuring out where it breaks. He gets this look when something interests him, this specific alive look, like someone has turned the lights up slightly in a room you hadn't realized was dim. He's also deeply, personally, annoyingly competitive. He cannot let anything go. He will argue with you about something that doesn't matter, win the argument, feel bad that he won, and then argue himself back into a loss just to keep the conversation going. He once spent 40 minutes debating the correct way to load a dishwasher with our friend Demi, and they are still not fully over it. It was October. We are in spring semester. He is my best friend and he is exhausting, and I love him more than most things on earth. Now. Eli Crane. Eli Crane transferred into Westmore University at the start of our junior year, and within 2 weeks he had somehow taken the academic ranking Levi had held for 2 years straight, gotten elected to student council, become the person whose name came up in every study group conversation, and made Levi's entire personality revolve around hating him. I'm not exaggerating. The man moved into our college town and immediately became Levi's entire personality. Did you hear what Crane said in the seminar today? Crane got the Miller Foundation grant. That was my grant, Zara. I applied to that grant. I don't understand why everyone acts like he's so smart. He's not even that smart. He's just confident. That's not the same thing. He was talking in the quad again. Just standing there. Talking. Why does he talk so much? I said, Levi, you've been talking about him for 45 minutes. I haven't spoken once. He said, I know, I'm sorry. And then continued talking about Eli Crane. This happens every day. I sat across from my best friend, and I watched his eyes go bright and strange whenever he said that name, bright and strange, in a way that had nothing to do with irritation, even if irritation was the word he kept reaching for, and I thought, oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I knew immediately. I want that on record. From the very first week I knew, and I said nothing because it was not my thing to say. I said nothing and I watched and I waited. It was the longest I have ever sat on information in my entire life, and I want a medal for it. Here's what Eli Crane looked like, because apparently, I'm the narrator of this disaster and you deserve context before the chaos. Tall. Not in the way that's inconvenient, in the way that makes you automatically look up when he walks into a room, where your eyes just go there without asking. Dark brown skin, close-cut hair, the kind of face that photographs well, which you could tell even without photographs because he always seemed somehow lit correctly in real life, like the light knew what it was doing near him. He wore reading glasses, thin wire frames that he pushed up his nose when he was thinking, and he didn't seem to know or care that this was affecting people. He had this laugh that was loud and unashamed and took up the whole room. Not in an annoying way. In the way that makes other people start smiling before they even know what's funny. He was also, for the record, actually very smart. Not just confident smart. Not just well-spoken smart. Genuinely, rigorously, annoyingly smart. Levi would have hated me for saying that. I only knew any of this because I had the unfortunate experience of being in 2 of Eli's classes, political theory on Tuesdays and a philosophy elective on Thursday mornings, that I was taking purely for the humanities credit, which meant I watched him think in real time twice a week. He wasn't a talker in the show-off sense. He picked his moments. But when he spoke, it had weight to it, the kind that makes the room go slightly quieter, and his questions were the kind that reframed everything said before them instead of just adding to the pile. I started telling Levi about things Eli said in class because I genuinely found them interesting, and Levi is the person I tell interesting things to. I stopped when I noticed Levi was storing every single one of them like ammunition. He said that about Rawls. That's a misread. That's a clear misread. Well, the professor didn't seem to think. The professor agreed with him. They had a whole conversation about it. Write down exactly what he said. I want to know exactly what he said. I stopped reporting. The first real incident happened in October. There was a debate tournament. The kind that the school newspaper covered, that got a paragraph in the alumni newsletter, that went on the wall of fame in the communications building in a little brass-edged frame. Levi had won it sophomore year. He kept the certificate on his desk. Not in a drawer, not in a file on his actual desk, where he could see it. He had been planning to defend his title since approximately the moment he won it. Eli entered at the last minute. I found out via text from Levi that just said, he signed up. I texted back, who? Who do you think, Zara? I put my phone face down and made a cup of tea. Then I picked it back up because I knew there would be more. 2 days before the tournament. 2 days. He probably just heard about it. He heard about it because I mentioned it in seminar last week because Professor Chen asked what we were doing this month and I said the debate tournament and Crane was right there. So you accidentally invited him. There was a 4-minute silence and then, I hate this university. The tournament was on a Friday evening. I sat in the 3rd row because I support my best friend and also because I wanted to watch what was clearly about to become a spectacle. I brought a snack. I brought 2 snacks. I was prepared. They drew names for brackets. I watched Levi's face across the room when they announced that he and Eli would be in opposite halves of the draw, meaning they could only meet in the final. Relief, first. Then half a second later, so fast that if I hadn't been specifically watching for it I would have missed it entirely, something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment. Which he immediately flattened into an expression of casual indifference. I clocked that. I filed it away in the folder I was building. They didn't face each other until the final round. I watched them both from my seat in the 3rd row, first separately as they dismantled other opponents, and then together at the front of the room under the overhead lights. I have genuinely never watched 2 people be more aware of each other while pretending not to be. Levi was good. He was so good that the room went quiet in a particular way, the way that means everyone listening has stopped forming their own thoughts and is just receiving his. He had the kind of controlled fire that he'd clearly been sharpening for weeks, and when he turned phrases they landed like something that had been waiting to be said. And then Eli spoke. He didn't argue against Levi so much as he extended him. He took Levi's strongest point, not his weakest, his strongest, and pulled it further than Levi had taken it, and then showed exactly where it collapsed under its own weight. It was the most respectful intellectual dismantling I had ever witnessed. It said, I was listening. It said, I take you seriously. It said, this is what it looks like when someone matches you. The judges were practically vibrating. Eli won. But afterward, and I was the only one close enough to see this, I was positioned specifically to see this. Eli looked straight at Levi across the room and gave him one slow nod. Not smug. Not performed. Just, genuine. Like, that was worth it. Like, thank you for making me work. Levi stood very still for a long moment. Something moved across his face that I didn't have a word for yet, something that lived in the territory between frustration and something else entirely. Then he turned and walked out. I found him in the corridor, leaning against the wall with his eyes closed and his arms crossed. Levi. I'm fine. I didn't say you weren't. I could hear it in your voice. I leaned against the wall next to him. He said your point about systemic precedent was the strongest argument in the room. Levi's eyes opened. When? After. To one of the judges. I was standing nearby and I heard him. He was quiet for a long moment. The hallway buzzed with people filing out behind us. That's annoying, he said finally. Is it? Yes. It would be easier if he were just. He stopped. Shook his head. Never mind. If he were just what? Nothing. Forget it. I looked at my best friend's profile. Jaw tight. Eyes fixed somewhere on the middle distance. And I thought, sweetheart. My absolute disaster of a best friend. You are in so much trouble and you don't even know it yet. And I love you and I am so sorry for what the next several months are going to do to you. Come on, I said. I'll buy you food. I'm not hungry. I'll buy you food and you can talk about him for 45 minutes without me saying anything. He pushed off the wall. 45 minutes is a lot. I know your capacity. He almost smiled. We went to get food. He talked about Eli Crane for 50 minutes. I ate my meal in peaceful silence and let him. November brought the group project. This was not something either of them chose. This was Professor Anand's doing, a woman with the energy of someone who has dedicated her academic career to engineering productive discomfort in people who think they know what they want. She assigned a semester-long project on urban policy reform, gave everyone a partner, and somehow through what I can only describe as divine chaos with a personal vendetta, Levi and Eli ended up together. Levi texted me from inside the lecture hall before he'd even stood up from his chair. She paired me with Crane. Then, Zara. Then, Zara. Then 4 emojis in a row that made no grammatical sense but communicated his entire emotional state with complete accuracy. I called him on my way back from my own class. Okay, I said. It's fine. It's not fine. It is, though. You're going to work with him and it's going to be fine. He's going to try to take over. Or, I said carefully, you're both going to contribute equally and produce something excellent. You sound like my mum. Your mum is a wise woman. She would also tell me to go talk to him and I'm not doing that. You have to do that. It's a graded project. A pause. I know. Text him tonight. I'll text him this week. Tonight, Levi. He hung up on me. Technically. He showed up at my room 2 hours later with his laptop and his notes and a face like someone had quietly moved his favorite piece of furniture to a different room. I made him tea. I let him pace and complain for exactly 20 minutes. I watched the clock. This was a conscious choice, and then I said, "Have you texted him yet?" "No." "Text him now." I don't know what to say. Say, "Hey, should we meet to start planning?" That is the complete text. 5 words. 6 words. Levi. He texted. Eli responded in 4 minutes. Their first exchange was so formally polite it was almost satirical, 2 people being excruciatingly careful with each other, testing the weight of every word before they placed it down. Hey, when works for you to meet and go over the brief? Hey, either Tuesday or Thursday works. Whatever's easier for you. Tuesday works. Library at 6. Perfect. See you there. I read over Levi's shoulder and said nothing. But I noticed that Levi's responses took considerably longer than they should have. for someone who texted faster than most people could think. He was reading them more than once before answering. He was choosing. I added this to the folder. See, I said. Normal. Fine. It's fine, Levi agreed, in the specific tone of voice that meant he was filing something away somewhere he wasn't ready to look at yet. Their first meeting was on Tuesday. Levi came to my room afterward. I was studying. He sat on my floor without asking, which he does sometimes, and was quiet for a while, which he almost never does. How was it, I asked, not looking up from my book. Fine. Just fine. It was. He stopped. Picked at the edge of my rug. He's organized. I didn't expect that. He had a whole framework already. For the project. Good organized or annoying organized? Both, Levi said, and there was something in his voice that was almost wondering. Like he'd learned something today that he was still turning over. He had this breakdown of the research questions and he'd already flagged the 3 most recent policy papers. I had the same 3 papers. So you think alike? A pause. In some ways. That should make the project easier. It should. Another pause. He made a joke. In the middle of the meeting. About one of the papers. It was actually funny. Like, specific. Not a general funny. A specifically funny thing that required him to read the paper carefully. Levi frowned slightly. I laughed. The horror. I wasn't expecting to laugh. Levi, I said, finally putting my book down. It's okay that you laughed. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then he looked away. I know. I'm just saying. He wasn't just saying. But I let it go. I met Eli properly in December. Properly meaning more than a nod in the hallway or a moment in the lecture hall where our paths crossed while I was trying not to be obvious about observing him. I mean, I actually sat with him, had a conversation, and got to understand in real time what Levi had been up against since September. Levi and I were in the campus cafe, the good one on the east side with the wide windows and the wood tables that students had been carving their names into since 1994, when Eli walked in alone with his laptop and his coat and that specific expression of someone scanning a crowded room for anywhere to put themselves. The cafe was full. Every table occupied. Levi saw him first. I know because I saw Levi see him. That stillness. That half-second of recalibration before the regular expression came back, the casual one, the everything is fine one. There's a seat, I said, loud enough for direction. Levi's head turned toward me with the speed of someone who's been surprised. What? There's a chair here. I raised my hand across the room. Eli. Here. Eli looked over. Found Levi. Found me. And I want you to understand that I was watching closely because I am always watching closely. He smiled. Genuinely. Not carefully. Not with the formal politeness I'd heard in those early project texts. Just, openly pleased in the way you're pleased when a good thing happens unexpectedly. He came over. Sat down. Said hi to me, asked how my Thursday seminar was going because apparently Levi had mentioned I was in it. Said hi to Levi. Levi said hey in a voice that had about 45% more casualness in it than any naturally casual person would need. They started talking about the project and then, by a series of steps I couldn't quite track, stopped talking about the project and started talking about something else. A paper. A concept. Something about redistributive policy and whether intent or outcome was the more meaningful measurement of justice. It became an argument within about 3 exchanges, but not the flat competitive kind I'd expected. It had texture. It had momentum. They kept building on what the other one said rather than talking past each other, and when one of them interrupted the other one there was no offense taken, they just adjusted mid-sentence and kept going. I sat there with my coffee and watched it happen. After about 15 minutes, I realized neither of them had looked at me. After 20 minutes, I was invisible. After 25, I finished my coffee, got up to order another one, came back, sat down, and they were still going. Levi's hands were moving the way they do when he's fully inside an idea, this specific gesture like he's shaping something in the air in front of him. Eli had his glasses off, turning them slightly in his fingers the way he did when he was thinking hard. I ordered a third coffee. I had nowhere to be. At some point Eli made a point that Levi couldn't immediately answer. I could tell by the way Levi went quiet for a beat, actually quiet, the way he almost never is, and pressed his mouth together and looked at the ceiling. Thinking. And then Levi said, "Okay, but that assumes the baseline is agreed upon, and it's not," and Eli leaned forward and said, "Right, so what do you do when the baseline is contested?" And they were off again. I love my best friend. I have watched him be brilliant many times. I had never watched him be brilliant at someone and have that someone give it straight back. Eventually Eli looked at his phone and said he had to get to a thing, and started packing up, and said it was good to see us, and said to me specifically that he'd look forward to Thursday's seminar, and left. Levi watched him go. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Then he looked at his coffee. "He's not as bad as I thought," he said. "No," I said. He's still Crane." "Sure. But he makes good arguments." "He does." The point about contested baselines was actually. Levi. What? Why are you explaining his good qualities to me? He looked up. Something crossed his face and disappeared. "I'm not." "You are. You've been listing them for the past 2 minutes." "I'm just." "It's fine," I said. "I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just noting that you're doing it." He picked up his coffee. Said nothing. Stared at the window. I watched the winter light do something specific to his face and I thought, we are so deep in it now. We are fully, completely, non-returnably in it. "Why are you smiling like that?" he said, without looking away from the window. "I'm not smiling." "You have the smile. The one you do when you know something." "I have resting pleasant face." "You have resting I know something face and I've known you for 3 years." He looked at me. "What?" "Nothing," I said serenely. "Drink your coffee." He narrowed his eyes at me. Drank his coffee. Said nothing. The folder was getting very full. December went on. The project meetings were twice a week by now. They'd started at once, then added a second because there was, quote, a lot to cover, though I noticed the updates Levi gave me about actual project progress suggested that for 2 very organized people they were moving through material at a puzzling pace. Like they kept stopping to talk about things that weren't the project. "He told me about his old university today," Levi said one night, unprompted, sitting on my floor with a book he wasn't reading. "Why he transferred." "What did he say?" "It wasn't working. The program." He said it in this very matter-of-fact way, like it wasn't a big deal, but you could tell it was. You could tell it cost him something. Levi turned a page he hadn't been reading. He doesn't complain. Like even when he's talking about something that was clearly hard, he just states it. Is that different from you? I complain constantly. You do, I agreed. He doesn't. A pause. I find it. He stopped. Find it what? Interesting, he said, in a voice that had decided on that word the way you decide on a word that isn't the right word but is adjacent to the right word and feels safer. I said nothing. He asked about my family too, Levi said. Just normal questions. Where I'm from, what my parents do. It wasn't weird. It didn't feel like small talk, it felt like he actually another stop. Wanted to know. Imagine that, I said. Levi looked at me. What? Someone wanting to know things about you. People want to know things about me. People want to talk to you. That's slightly different. He thought about this for a moment with the expression he gets when he's genuinely considering something and doesn't want to admit it's landing. He remembered something I said last week, Levi said finally. Something minor. About a book. He brought it up today because he saw something that made him think of it. He paused. He remembered. The way he said it. The specific quiet of it. I looked at my best friend sitting on my floor holding a book he hadn't read a single page of, talking about someone remembering a small thing he'd said, and I thought, oh, Levi. Oh, you sweet disaster. Cool, I said, gently. Yeah, he said. And looked back at his book. Winter break should have reset things. It did not reset things. I know this because Levi texted me on December 26, the day after Christmas, a day he traditionally spends eating leftovers with his family and refusing to engage with technology, to tell me that Eli had sent him an article about redistributive policy and he wasn't sure if he should respond because it was the holidays and he didn't want to seem like he was just sitting around waiting to talk about policy papers. I said, he sent you an article on Christmas holidays. He was thinking about you on Christmas. 30-second pause. It was the 26th, Levi said. Levi. I'm going to respond. I know you are. It's a good article. I know. It doesn't mean anything that he sent it. Sure. Zara. Respond to the article, Levi. He responded to the article. They apparently texted about it for 2 hours. I know this because I got periodic updates throughout the evening that I had not requested. He's never read the Tilly piece. How has he never read the Tilly piece? He says Tilly is overrated and I don't know what to do with that. He's reading it right now while we're talking. He's reading it and texting me reactions. In real time. Okay, he says page 47 is actually good. I told him. Zara, he's been talking about this for 20 minutes, he won't stop. Zara, are you awake? I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I was smiling so hard it was ridiculous. I was alone in my childhood bedroom over Christmas and I was smiling at my ceiling like an idiot because my best friend had found someone who would text him about policy papers on the 26th of December. January. They were back on campus. The project was due in 3 weeks. Levi had almost entirely stopped complaining about Eli. This sounds like progress. This sounds like the natural resolution of a rivalry. I want you to understand that it was not that. It was the opposite of that. When Levi was complaining about Eli, he was managing him putting all of that feeling somewhere external, labeling it irritation, keeping it in a box he could see. Now he wasn't complaining. Now he got quiet when Eli came up and changed the subject with the careful precision of someone who is very aware of every word they're choosing. That is not less feeling. That is more feeling that has run out of room. I noticed other things. The way his phone lit up in my room and he glanced at it and something shifted in his face, just a flicker, just a lightning before he deliberately looked away. The way he laughed once at something and then stopped himself, like catching himself having too much of a reaction in public. The way he mentioned Eli's name and then didn't mention it again, like he was rationing it. Once, just once, when he didn't know I was looking, I saw him rereading a text. Not responding. Not laughing. Just reading it again. That soft, private expression that people have when they're feeling something they haven't told anyone about yet. I knew that expression. I'd had that expression. Specifically, I'd had it about a girl in my sophomore year who I didn't do anything about and have regretted since. I said nothing to Levi. I was waiting for him to come to it himself. He would. I knew he would. He just needed time, and the specific courage that comes from running out of places to put a feeling. I was prepared to be patient. What I was not prepared for was the Valentine's Day party. The party was at Demi's place. Demi is one of those people who treats themed events as a creative calling. She had covered her apartment in red and pink. She had made a playlist that was exactly half genuinely romantic and half absolutely unhinged. She had made themed snacks. She had invited approximately 60 people into a space that reasonably fits 40. I love her. I love this about her. She is one of my people. Levi came with me because Levi goes where I go when there are social situations he feels ambivalent about. He looked fine. He was wearing the dark green shirt that I'd told him 3 months ago looked good on him, which he claims to have put on by accident, but we both know he did not put it on by accident. Eli was there when we arrived. He'd come with his roommate Marcus, and he was standing near the window talking to someone and he looked good. He always looked good, that was the annoying part, but he looked relaxed tonight, at ease, in a grey shirt with the sleeves pushed up and an expression that said he was enjoying himself without performing it. Levi saw him immediately. I saw Levi see him immediately. And then Levi went to the complete opposite side of the room. Just turned, found the maximum possible distance from Eli, and relocated himself there. I stood where I was for a moment, watching my best friend physically navigate away from a person at a party the way you avoid a situation you don't trust yourself in, and I thought, okay, we've escalated. I watched Levi work the room from the far side of it. He was good at this, he genuinely liked people, and it showed, and he had the kind of easy conversation style that made everyone he talked to feel like the most interesting person there. He was fine. He was perfectly normal. Except that every 4 or 5 minutes, without seeming to mean to, his eyes crossed the room. Every time, Eli. Not staring. Not lingering. Just finding him. The way your eyes find a source of light in a dim room without you deciding to look. Every time, Levi looked away before it could register as anything. I got a drink. I talked to Demi for a bit. I kept most of my attention on my peripheral vision, which Demi probably thought was rude, but Demi doesn't know what I'm dealing with here. Then a girl from the economics department, Sophia, I'd seen her in a few shared seminars, pretty and quick and the kind of person who made conversation look effortless, started talking to Eli. And she was good at it. She made him laugh twice in a row, leaning in slightly when she spoke, and he was responding with that full attention he gave to things he was actually interested in. I happened to be positioned near Levi when it happened. He went still. It was so small that no one else would have seen it. Just a slight change in his posture, a millimeter. The way he looked at his drink instead of the room, the way his jaw did the specific thing that I knew from 3 years of knowing him was Levi trying to feel something quietly, in a small internal space, without letting it show. He was not angry. He wasn't being dramatic. He was just still. Like someone had pressed pause on him from the inside. I crossed the room to him. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he said. Still looking at his drink. "You okay?" "I'm great. Parties are great. Everything is great." "Levi." "I'm completely fine, Zara. This is me being fine." I stood next to him. I didn't push. I handed him my drink, which was better than his. I was feeling generous and stayed there, which was what he needed, and he knew I knew it was what he needed, and that was enough. After a minute he said, very quietly, to his drink, "Is it weird that I don't like that?" "No," I said. "Because I don't have a reason not to like it." He was keeping his voice very level. "It's not like I've said anything. I haven't done anything. I don't have any claim. So it's not logical. That feelings aren't a logic problem," I said. He exhaled slowly. "They should be. I know you think that." Another silence. The music pulsed around us. Demi's playlist had entered its unhinged era, something with a heavy bass that had displaced several of the more sensitive party guests toward the corners of the room. "She's not even his type," Levi muttered. I kept my face very neutral. "How do you know his type?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. Said nothing. "I don't," he said finally. "I don't know his type." Right. This conversation is making me feel observed. I'm literally just standing here. You're standing here in a very specific way. I don't know what that means. It means you have that face. I don't have a face. Zara, you have had that face for 3 months. What face? I don't have a face. This is just my face, it is my face that I have. Forget it. He looked away. What do you think his type is? He said, very quietly, in a different tone than the rest of the sentence. And I laughed. I couldn't help it. I turned away and laughed into my cup for a solid 5 seconds, and when I turned back he was giving me the most exhausted, betrayed look I had ever received from someone I loved deeply, which was saying something because Levi had given me many exhausted, betrayed looks over the years. Do not, he said. I'm not saying anything. You are saying everything without saying a single word, and it is incredibly annoying. I love you, I said. I know. He looked back across the room, and something in his face changed, went softer and more undefended than he probably meant. I'm going to get some air. He turned toward the balcony. I watched him go. I counted. 1, 2, 3 minutes. Then Eli said something to Sophia, excused himself naturally, not abruptly, not rudely, just finished the conversation and moved through the room. Toward the balcony. I set my drink down on the nearest surface. I relocated myself to a position near the window with a view of the balcony that was not obvious. I am not above this. I have accepted this about myself. They stood at the railing, both looking out at the winter dark, and I couldn't hear them over the music, but I could see them. I could see the shape of it. Eli said something first. Levi looked sideways at him with that expression, the one I'd been cataloging all semester, the one that lived in the space between guarded and undone, and then looked away again. Said something back. Eli turned toward him slightly, and I watched the particular attention he gave Levi, that focused in quality, like he was the most interesting thing in Eli's field of vision. He probably was. I suspected this had been true for a while. Levi's shoulders dropped from where they'd been sitting somewhere near his ears. By millimeters. But I noticed. Then Eli said something else, something short, something that landed like a question, and Levi laughed. Really laughed, the helpless thrown back kind that he couldn't have controlled if he'd tried, and he turned his face away from Eli immediately, like someone turning away from something too bright. Eli watched him turn away. That was the thing. Eli watched him turn away with an expression that wasn't teasing or amused or curious. It was something quieter than that. Something that had been there a while and was just very carefully not being said. I put my hand over my mouth. Oh, these two absolute disasters. These two brilliant, impossible, circling the same thing from different directions disasters, standing on a balcony in February, not saying any of the things that anyone watching them from inside through a window could clearly see needed to be said. I loved them both. I genuinely did. And they were each going to give me an aneurysm. February turned into March. They submitted the project. Professor Anand sent them an email individually and then together, which I only know because Levi showed me, which he did with an extremely studied casualness, saying it was some of the strongest student policy analysis she'd encountered in her teaching career. She read a passage from it aloud in the next class session. She cited them by name. I watched them from across the room. The moment she started reading and I was watching Levi, because I was always watching Levi, his head came up slightly and he looked across the room to where Eli was sitting before he could stop himself. Like a reflex. Like something you do when you want to share a moment with a specific person and your body knows that before your brain does. Eli was already looking at him. How long Eli had been looking at him, I couldn't say. Levi smiled. Small. Like he was trying not to. Eli smiled back. Not trying at all. The girl next to me whispered, "They're so competitive. Even when they win, they can't stop." I said, Spring came in the way it always does in university towns, slowly and then all at once, like someone turned a dial. The campus went from grey and bare to almost aggressive with green, and everyone emerged from their winter selves slightly dazed by the light. Things between Levi and Eli had settled into something new. Something that I observed carefully and could not quite categorize. They weren't just project partners anymore, the project was done. But they were still meeting. Still texting. Still showing up in the same places with a frequency that exceeded coincidence. They'd started getting coffee after Thursday's seminar, which I technically attended, which meant I was sometimes there for these coffees and sometimes conspicuously elsewhere. I was usually elsewhere. Not because I wasn't wanted, Eli always included me, he was genuinely warm like that, but because I could tell that when I was absent something different happened. Levi was more himself without an audience, even an audience he trusted. And I suspected, watching the ease that had built between them over the months, that Eli had figured that out and gave Levi room accordingly. Which, honestly, told me more about Eli than anything else. The person who saw what Levi needed and quietly arranged for it to be available without making anything of it. I thought about that a lot. I thought about it specifically one afternoon in late March when I stopped by the library to return a book and found them at one of the long tables near the back, not studying, not working, just talking. Just sitting in the particular way of two people who have stopped needing a reason to be near each other. They didn't see me. I stood in the stacks for a moment and watched. Levi was saying something, leaning forward with his elbows on the table, hands moving through the air the way they did when he was inside an idea. And Eli was watching him with his chin in his hand and that quiet focused attention, the way you look at something you're not in a hurry to stop looking at. I turned around and left without returning my book. I went back to my room and sat on my bed and thought, one of them needs to do something. This cannot continue indefinitely. Something has to move. Something moved on a Tuesday. Levi called me at 11 p.m. Can you come over? What happened? Are you okay? I'm yet. Can you just come? I pulled on shoes and my jacket and went. His dorm room was low-lit and slightly disorganized in the specific way it gets when his mind is too full to manage his surroundings. He was sitting on his bed with his back against the wall and his knees up, and the expression of someone who has very recently had a revelation they were not prepared for and have not yet decided what to do with. I sat on his desk chair. Waited. We were in the library, he started. His voice was careful. Working on the extra credit thing, Professor Ngosi's supplemental, and it was late. You know how it gets when it's late and you've been in the same place for a long time and everything gets a bit. He moved a hand. Quiet. Like the room does. And I said something, I don't even remember what I said. And he laughed. He put his head down on the desk and laughed, and when he looked up Levi stopped. The room was very quiet. I just sat there, he said. And I thought, I would be genuinely fine with this. Being here. Staying. Late and for no real reason, indefinitely. He exhaled. I didn't think it consciously. It was just there, like it had already been true for a while and I'd only just noticed it. I said nothing. I let it sit. And then I thought about the fact that I thought that, he continued. And then I panicked. And I said I had to go and I left. Which was, he winced. I left in the middle of what we were doing. I just went. And then he texted me 20 minutes later asking if I was okay, and I haven't answered because I don't know what to say to that, because I am apparently not a person who has words for anything right now. I looked at my best friend. At his phone on the bed next to him, screen dark. Can I say something? I asked. You're going to anyway. I've been watching you talk about this person since September. 7 months, Levi. I know your voice for things. I know what you sound like when you're interested in someone, when you respect someone, when you're performing irritation, when something actually got under your skin and stayed there. I paused. What you do with him is all of those things every single time. And I don't think you don't know that. I think you know it, and you've been hoping if you don't say it, it won't become real. He stared at the far wall. I don't know how to be this, he said quietly. I don't have a framework. I've never. He stopped, started again. It's not just that I haven't said it to him. It's that I've barely let myself think it. Because once I think it, it's. He shook his head. I don't know who I become on the other side of this. I don't know how to hold all of it at once and I'm. He didn't finish the sentence. But I heard it anyway. I got up from the chair and sat next to him on the bed. He leaned his head sideways onto my shoulder, which he did sometimes when something was too big and he needed somewhere to put it, the way we'd done since freshman year when the world was new and large and occasionally terrifying. You don't have to know all of it, I said. You don't have to have the whole thing figured out before you take one step. You just have to know what's true right now. A long silence. Right now, he said slowly. Right now I think I want to answer his text. Then answer it. And say what? Whatever's true. He was quiet for another moment. Then he reached for his phone. I watched him type, delete, type again, delete again, hold the phone with both hands and stare at the ceiling, type once more. He showed it to me before he sent it. Sorry, I bolted. It was nothing you did. Can we talk tomorrow? Not a confession. Not a declaration. Just a door left open. He sent it. 3 minutes passed. I know because I was watching the time and I couldn't stop. 3 minutes in which neither of us breathed at quite the right pace. His phone buzzed. Eli, yeah. I'd like that. Levi, read it. Read it again. Read it a third time. Then, slowly, the look came over his face, the one I'd been watching appear and disappear all semester, the one that was soft and bright and terrified and alive, the one he never let anyone see, and he was letting me see it now because he was too full of it to keep putting it away. I said nothing. I just sat next to him and let him feel it, all the way through. I don't know exactly what happened the next day. He didn't tell me everything, and I didn't ask, because some things belong to the people they happen to and you love them by letting them keep those parts. What I know is that he knocked on my door at 3:30 in the afternoon. Our knock, 2 short and 1 long, the code we'd had since freshman year, and when I opened it he was standing in the hallway with his hands in his hoodie pocket and his chin slightly ducked and the expression of someone who has walked through something and come out the other side and hasn't fully processed what the other side looks like yet. I let him in. He stood in the middle of my room for a moment, not sitting, just standing, like he needed a second. Well, I said. He looked up. And for the first time in months, and maybe longer than months, in maybe the longest I'd ever seen, my best friend's face was completely, entirely unguarded. Not performing fine. Not flattening or containing or labeling something as something easier. Just, open. Like a window that had been painted shut for a long time and someone had finally taken a knife to the seal. I told him, he said. The words landed quietly between us. And I said. And he said. Levi stopped. The corner of his mouth moved before he'd decided to let it. He said he'd been trying to figure out how to say the same thing since December. I stared at him. December, I said. December. Levi. That is 3 months. I know. 3 months of you in my room telling me you just found his arguments interesting. Zara. 3 months of he's not even that smart and he just took my grant and. I know, okay, and he was smiling now, properly, the full one, the helpless one that he couldn't have stopped if he'd tried. We're both idiots. I know. I accept this. Please say it as many times as you need to. The 2 most intellectually capable people on this campus. I know. Collectively the most oblivious. Zara. 7 months. Are you going to let me be happy for 1 second? He said. Just 1 second. Let me be happy. I stopped. I looked at him. Really looked, the way I looked at the beginning of all of this, except now there was nothing to decode, nothing to read between the lines of, nothing underneath the surface being carefully held away from air. Just Levi. Happy. Quietly and genuinely and terrifiedly happy, in the way of someone who found the thing and is still not quite convinced they're allowed to keep it. Yeah, I said. Okay. Come here. I hugged him. He let me, which he didn't always. He was not a natural hug person. He'd told me this once as if it were a medical diagnosis, and I felt him exhale against my shoulder like he'd been holding something in for a very long time. He had. I think he had been holding it since September, maybe longer, maybe from the first morning he walked into that seminar and Eli Crane said something that made him grip his pen and decide he hated him. He hadn't hated him. He'd just been afraid of what he was going to feel. I held my best friend in my dorm room on a spring Tuesday afternoon and I thought about that first oh no back in September, and I thought, here we are. Here, finally, impossibly, wonderfully, is the other side of oh no. Here is what I want you to know, if you have come this far, they are still ridiculous. This is important. This is part of the story. Because love, whatever it is, when it's real and specific and between two people who have spent months being shaped by each other, doesn't make people less themselves. It just gives them someone to be that self around without armor on. Levi still competes with him. He will deny this, and it is not true. They still argue in seminars in a way that makes the rest of the class feel like they've accidentally wandered into something they weren't supposed to see. There is a particular quality to it now, less barbed, more like two people who have learned each other's edges and work with them rather than against them, but the fire is still there. If anything, it's brighter because it's not carrying the weight of everything unsaid. Eli still wins things. Levi is working on his feelings about this. It's a process. I sat with them in the cafe last Thursday. They were doing the thing they always do now, talking over each other and apologizing and doing it again, and at some point Eli said something that made Levi laugh so suddenly he nearly choked on his coffee, and without missing a word Eli reached across the table and handed him a napkin without looking, without interrupting himself, just reached and handed, like he'd already known, like he'd already been watching for it. Levi took the napkin. Said nothing. His ears went slightly pink. And then he looked up and caught my eye over Eli's shoulder, and he had this look, tiny, mortified, completely and utterly gone, and I very carefully looked at my phone. I'm not going to say I told him so. Looking. I'm absolutely going to say I told him so. I have been saying I told him so for 6 weeks, and I intend to say it for as long as it remains true, which is going to be a very long time. He knows. He accepts this. He has determined that it's the price of the thing, and that the thing is worth it. He's right. For the record, and I have been watching this whole story unfold since September, I have had the best and most emotionally turbulent seat in the house. He is absolutely right. The thing is worth it. The thing is going to be worth it for a very long time. I have been wrong about a lot of things in my 20 years. I was not wrong about this. Their story is only just beginning. Heavy Black Heart. Don't miss part 2, where everything changes. Subscribe for the next chapter.